JP Morgan Chase is one of the most powerful institutions on the planet, and their CEO and chairman, Jamie Dimon, might be the most powerful man alive in finance today. What if this man, who sits in the center of some of the biggest financial scandals of all of modern history, is also one of the key players keeping Bitcoin's price and bull run suppressed? You're going to want to grab your machetes for this one, because we're going to get into the weeds. I'm Oceans. This is Beyond Bitcoin. Let's go. Imagine this. You run a multi-million-dollar financial company. Your entire business, payroll, customer deposits, payouts, liquidity, depends on the smooth, invisible rails of the banking system. You're trusted by your clients, you're regulated, you're compliant. You're doing everything by the book. And then one morning you wake up to an email. Not a warning, not a question, not a flag. Just a message from your bank, the biggest bank in America, telling you that your accounts are closed. No loans, no savings, no ability to move money, no financial products of any kind. Effective immediately. Snip. Just like that. The entire foundation of your company is gone. Payroll, frozen. Vendors, blocked. Customer funds, stuck. Entire industries relying on your infrastructure, dead in the water. The wild part, you didn't break the law, you didn't commit fraud, you didn't do anything wrong. You were just cut off. That's the nightmare that just became real for Strike, one of the most important Bitcoin payments companies in America, after JP Morgan Chase suddenly pulled the plug on all their accounts. And if a regulated, legitimate company serving millions of users can be erased from the financial system overnight, what does that say about the rest of us? To really understand what's happening now, you have to understand what JP Morgan Chase actually is. This isn't just a bank. It's the final form of over 1,000 predecessors, merged over more than 2 centuries. And it goes all the way back to 1799, when Aaron Burr helped create the Manhattan Company as a water company for New York, with a sneaky little clause in its charter that allowed it to operate as a bank instead. Public purpose on the surface, private power underneath, from day one. Fast forward a century. J. Pierpont Morgan is personally brokering bailouts in the panic of 1907. So powerful that the government literally calls him to stabilize the system, which eventually leads to the creation of the Federal Reserve as a response. Fast forward again. In 1955, the Manhattan Company merges with Chase National, turning it into Chase Manhattan Bank. In 2000, Chase Manhattan merges with JP Morgan & Co. This is the modern JP Morgan Chase & Co. In 2004, JP Morgan acquires Bank One, bringing in Jamie Dimon.
January 14, 2004, that was when JP Morgan Chase said it would buy smaller rival Bank One Corp for more than $50 billion. The deal gave JP Morgan access to Bank One's $290 billion of assets, 7 million retail customers, and 500,000 small business clients. But the biggest prize would be the onboarding of a 40-something Wall Street wonderkin named Jamie Dimon.
Then comes 2008, and we all know what happened in 2008. When Bear Stearns is on the verge of collapse, JP Morgan acquires it with tens of billions in Federal Reserve guarantees to absorb the risk. When Washington Mutual fails, the largest bank in U.S. history at the time, JP Morgan again swoops in and acquires key assets with government assistance. Even in 2023, when First Republic goes down, who's there to pick up the pieces with FDIC support? JP Morgan Chase. Over and over and over. There's a crisis. The government steps in, and JP Morgan emerges bigger. It's like the final boss that keeps leveling up after you think you beat him. And it's not just size. Look at the rap sheet. In 2012, the London whale scandal, over $6 billion in trading losses in its chief investment office, followed by $920 million in fines for unsafe and unsound practices. In 2020, nearly $1 billion in civil and criminal penalties for using spoofing to manipulate precious metals and treasury markets. In 2023, at least $290 million to settle claims from Jeffrey Epstein's accusers, plus another $75 million to the U.S. Virgin Islands over allegations JP Morgan turned a blind eye while Epstein used the bank to facilitate his crimes. In 2024, around $348 million in new fines for inadequate trade surveillance and market misconduct monitoring. You don't pay those kinds of fines unless you are so central, so systematically important, that you're effectively above the normal rules. So when we ask, is JP Morgan more powerful than the Fed? It's not a meme. It's a serious question. Because in crisis after crisis, The Fed and the government have bent over backwards to keep JP Morgan standing, while JP Morgan in turn has gained even more control over the financial rails everyone else has to use. And now that power is being aimed squarely at Bitcoin's ecosystem. Now, layer this on top. A major US Bitcoin payments company, Strike, wakes up to find out it's being debanked by JP Morgan. No fraud charges, no criminal allegations, just we're done. And we can't tell you why. This is what I want you to really sit with. Everyone thinks that the power of a bank is in the money that it holds. It's not. The real power of a bank is the ability to say no. No account, no loan, no wires, no access. And here's the real twisted part. The money you think is yours in the bank, legally, it isn't. When you deposit dollars, you don't keep ownership. The bank does. You become an unsecured creditor. You hold a claim, an IOU. Your access is a privilege, not a right. And that privilege can be revoked if you become politically inconvenient, system threatening, or just too aligned with the wrong future. We've seen this. Businesses debanked over political views, individuals debanked over associations, like we've seen in the Canadian truckers' protest. Entire industries treated as radioactive. The marijuana industry, for instance. So when a Bitcoin company like Strike gets cut off, it's not just a business problem, it's a message. The banks had a monopoly for decades. They controlled savings, loans, payments, credit, settlement. Then something happened that they didn't expect. Bitcoin, stablecoins, and crypto rails started to grow outside of their walled gardens. They watched as Coinbase grew into a massive on-ramp. Robinhood onboarded an entire generation to trading. Bitcoin and other assets like it see trillions in cumulative volume. At first they laughed, then they lobbied, then they tried to ignore it. But the market would not let them. Crypto got too big to dismiss. So they pivoted to plan B. If you can't kill it, integrate it. But on our terms. Custody products, tokenized deposits, bank grade, blockchain solutions. But at the same time, closing accounts, pressuring companies, nudging regulators, controlling on and off ramps. One hand offers a shiny crypto product. The other hand keeps its fingers wrapped around a kill switch. And if you think about it, this makes perfect sense from their perspective. Bitcoin and crypto threaten to expose a fundamental crisis within our current banking system through their decentralized, ungovernable design. No one controls Bitcoin, and that's a problem for an industry that has systematically rooted itself into every transaction that we make or take. Why would a cartel keep banking a customer that's actively building the rails to root around them? Some people find Bitcoin through curiosity. Some people find Bitcoin through number go up. If your existence threatens the incentives of the old financial guard, you're not a customer, you're a problem. And problems get removed. Because again, it's not your money if you need permission to use it. Let's zoom out for a second. Having your entire financial life dependent on a handful of banks is one kind of risk. There's another kind too. Real world shocks, blackouts, natural disasters, grid issues, supply chain breakdowns. That's why I like what sat123.com is doing. Portable power, industrial grade communication, all in curated kits that don't require you to be a weekend bunker warrior. If you're stacking Bitcoin for long-term sovereignty, it makes sense to stack a little real-world preparedness too. Head over to sat123.com and use the promo code SIMPLY for 15% off your purchase. Stay sovereign, stay connected with sat123.com. So on one side of this economic civil war, you have the old banking cartel, which is JP Morgan or too big to fail banks, the legacy rails. But on the other side, you have new rails forming. Stable coins like Tether, global dollar demand outside of traditional banks, and sitting behind all of it, Bitcoin, as the hard collateral of last resort. When Tether earns interest on its treasury pile, they buy Bitcoin and gold, hard sovereign assets, which means Bitcoin is becoming the check and balance of both banks and stablecoins. We live in a world where human committees change the rules whenever it's convenient. Central banks print trillions when the system wobbles. Bank CEOs quietly shape markets and access, and monetary policy is whatever a rotating cast of officials say it is in this cycle. This is all versus a 21 million hard cap, a transparent issuance, open access, rules enforced by code, not personalities. Yet most people still default to paper money today. That's not a bug, that's just how early we are. Sometimes adoption shifts slowly. Sometimes there's a catalytic event where the mask slips so hard people rush to the exit all at once. Debanking, weaponized finance, index exclusion, regulatory games. These are all kinds of cracks that push people from trusting institutions to trusting math. So let's connect the dots. A bank reduces exposure to a Bitcoin treasury company right as the index game turns against it. The same bank debanks a major Bitcoin payments company. That bank has spent years paying billions in fines for everything from market manipulation to rogue trading to failing to stop a serial predator like Epstein to use its accounts. Meanwhile, people are slowly realizing their bank deposits are just unsecured IOUs that can be frozen on a whim. Old guard versus new guard. Human money versus math money. You can call it an economic civil war, or you can call it the messy transition from one monetary operating system to another. But whatever you call it, you are living through it. And pretending it's just volatility is like standing in the middle of a battlefield and complaining about the noise. So what does Bitcoin actually do in this story? It takes money out of the permission system. It turns balances into bearer assets. It removes kill switches from CEOs and committees. And it gives people something that can't be debased, frozen, or censored by banks like JP Morgan. Bitcoin is not perfect. It's not painless, but it is different. And that difference matters when index providers quietly gatekeep, banks quietly debank, politicians quietly weaponize finance, and the monetary base keeps quietly expanding. When you hold Bitcoin in your own custody, you're stepping outside of that game, where Jamie Dimon, MSCI, the Fed, the Treasury, or whoever's in office can change the track mid-ride. You're anchoring part of your life to something with fixed rules, visible to everyone, changeable by no one. That's the core, and that's the point. And if you want to go one step further than just holding Bitcoin and actually plug into the network itself, then you need to check out Sazmining.com. Sazmining.com lets you own real ASIC miners, hosted in facilities powered by clean, renewable energy, with uptime, management, and logistics handled for you. While you receive Bitcoin, they mine straight to your wallet. No ETFs, no middleman coin exposure, just machines, electricity, and sats. They only win when you win. And they're aligned with the same values that a lot of us in the space care about. And if you go to Sazmining.com right now and you put the promo code SimplyBitcoin, you'll get $100 off your first rig. Book a call with one of their expert team members and start mining today at Sazmining.com. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you like what you see and you want to see more, make sure you hit that like button below, or you could subscribe to the Simply Bitcoin channel for more content like this. Also, don't forget to hit that notification bell. I'm Oceans. This is Beyond Bitcoin. Until next time.